today our session, as I mentioned, will be all about knowing about osteoporosis. And we are very, very privileged to actually have our inpatient nurses from level 12 and also our physiotherapy colleague to join us in delivering this session. So maybe I'll introduce the speakers for this session today. Firstly, we have Sister Sue In. So she's a nurse clinician from level 12. We also have senior staff nurses Nisha, who's from Ward 12C, and also Kamaria from Ward 12B. So they are both trained and also have their advanced diploma in orthopedics. We also have Kamini. So Kamini is our physiotherapist. She's currently in the physiotherapy outpatient clinic. So this is the outline for today's session. We want to understand osteoporosis. Secondly, we want to know the screening tools to detect osteoporosis. We'll know the risk factors for osteoporosis, the strategies to prevent and manage osteoporosis, and also you'll find out more about falls and osteoporosis. And at the end of the session, as I have mentioned, we have some question and answer segment. So maybe I'll now proceed to hand over the session to Nisha, who will get the session started. Yeah, Nisha, please.
Okay, thank you, Aisha. Hello, everyone. My name is Nisha. I'm from orthopedic train from level 12. So let's look at what is osteoporosis. So bone is a living tissue that is consistently being broken down and replaced. Osteoporosis occurs when the creation of new bone does not keep up with the loss of old bone. So as people enter their 40s and 50s, bone break down more than is being replaced. A bone break down and it becomes brittle. So at a closer look inside the bone shows something like a honeycomb. So with this osteoporosis, the honeycomb grows larger and the bone that forms the honeycomb gets smaller. So the outer shell of the bone gets thinner and all this make the bone weaker. So osteoporosis causes bone to become weak, brittle, increasing the person's risk of sustaining a fracture. However, osteoporosis is often underdiagnosed and is developed without any symptoms or pain until a fracture is happened. So next we look at the prevalence. So it is estimated worldwide that 1 in 3 women and 1 in 5 men over the age of 50 will be affected by a broken bone due to osteoporosis. In Singapore, osteoporosis is a public health issue because of aging population and also because it's often underdiagnosed. In fact, we have one of the highest rate of osteoporosis in Asia for women over the age of 50 years. And we also have the highest incidence of hip fracture among the independent countries in Asia. So now let's proceed to learn more about osteoporosis through a mini quiz that we have prepared for you all. So in the next few slides, we will be asking a true or false question. For each question, a poll will appear on your screen. You may click either true or false to each statement, and then the result will be flashed. So let's move on to question 1. Osteoporosis causes pain? True or false? I'll give you all some time to answer the question. Okay, so 36% say true, 64% say false. Okay, so the answer is false. Normally, osteoporosis does not cause pain. Pain in a person with osteoporosis may be due to fall or fracture. So if you are 60 years old and experience pain, it's advisable to see a doctor to rule out any fracture or osteoporosis. Okay, so let's move on to the next question. Osteoporosis affect both men and women? True or false? I'll give you some time to answer the question. Okay, so everybody answered true, which is correct. Osteoporosis affect both men and women. However, women are more likely to get osteoporosis. In fact, women with age 50 and above have a 4 times higher rate of osteoporosis compared to men. This is because women have smaller and less dense bone than men, and also after menopause, the estrogen level, which is important in the bone formation, becomes low. So that's why women are at higher risk compared to men. Okay, let's move on to the next question. It is necessary to take calcium supplement? True or false? I'll give you some time to answer. Okay, so 60% say true, 40% say false, and the answer is false. Because dietary calcium, which is from food source, is most preferred source of calcium, over the last few years, there will be a debate on how individual can get adequate amount of calcium. And this debate was due to reported that calcium supplement may increase the risk of myocardial infarction, kidney stones. That's why its preferred source of calcium will be from food source. However, this supplement may be beneficial for people who cannot get calcium through their diet. And it also recommended to get doctor's advice before taking calcium supplements. Okay, let's move on to the last question. I should avoid weight training if I'm at risk of osteoporosis. Is it true or false? Okay, so mostly all answered false, and the answer is correct. A common misconception that one cannot carry heavy weight if they have osteoporosis. That's not true. In fact, a person with osteoporosis should continue to weight-bear exercise that can help them strengthen their bone. But again, it is advisable to consult your physician or physiotherapist before starting any new exercise program. Okay, thank you for all your participation. So we will move on to the next risk factor of osteoporosis. Okay, so we will now look at the risk factors which can be divided into two, non-modifiable and modifiable risk factors. So there are some risk factors that are non-modifiable. This risk is higher in women, older persons, Asians and Caucasian, people with previous fractures, and those with family history of osteoporosis are also at higher risk of getting osteoporosis, and also ethnic group. So for example, like Asians and Caucasians are more at risk of getting osteoporosis. And then medical condition like autoimmune disease, liver and kidney disease, diabetic hyperthyroidism also increase one's risk of osteoporosis. And being on long-term medication such as steroids, anti-seizure, furosemide and omeprazole may also increase one's risk of getting osteoporosis. And then we will move on to risk factors that can be changed so that we can reduce of getting osteoporosis. So first is excessive amount of alcohol consumption. Okay, so alcohol can decrease bone formation and the body's ability to absorb calcium. So limiting to avoid alcohol is best for bone health. Next is eating disorder, and being underweight is dangerous for bone health because low of nutrition intake may result in decreased bone formation and rapid bone loss. And the next one is having sedentary lifestyle. Ones with lack of exercise result in bone and muscle loss. So they are at risk of getting osteoporosis. And then having low intake of calcium, vitamin D, also will have risk of osteoporosis because there are not enough calcium, which will lead to early bone loss. Smoking. So smoking actually affect body ability to absorb calcium, leading to lower bone density and weaker bone. And another risk factor will be excessive caffeine and carbonated intake. Having 6 or more servings of caffeine a day has been shown to decrease our calcium absorption. So to reduce caffeine and carbonated intake to have more bone formations. Okay, how we know whether we have osteoporosis? So there are screening tools. So we look at our first screening tools, which is called osteoporosis self-assessment for Asian. Also short form is OSTA. So this tool is to guide to help us postmenopausal Asian woman risk of having osteoporosis based on her weight and age. So for example, if you are 63 years old and your weight 50 kg, you will come under the risk of moderate. So if you're under a high risk, you will need to see a doctor to get your bone mass density check, and then they will give you according to the result treatment. So if you're under a moderate risk category, you are advised to see a doctor to determine if there's any other risk factor which lead you to have osteoporosis. And if you are low risk of osteoporosis, low risk, you need to have a good lifestyle, which is have a good diet and exercise to maintain your bone mass. You can get this screening tool from our Tan Tock Seng Health Library or through an internet to get. Okay, so the next one will be bone mineral density or bone mass density, also called as DEXA. So there's a dual energy X-ray absorption in the method of choice to do. So it's a very simple, non-invasive test, but there's a little radiation. It may take about approximately 15 minutes. During this scan, you have to lie down on the table. So they will measure your risk of a fracture, and report from the scan will guide the doctor in prescribing the necessary treatment. Okay, so consequences of osteoporosis are mainly commonly is fracture, and the main common sites is hip, spine, and wrist areas. So consequences of osteoporosis fracture: 1 in 3 people with hip fracture will suffer considerable loss of function and become dependent on others. We also know that fracture do not affect people physically, but also emotionally. It is reduced overall quality of life, often causing depression and isolation because of reduced social interaction, and they may no longer be able to do activities they used to do. Okay, now I'll hand over to Kamaria for the next session.
Okay, thank you, Nisha. Hello, good morning, everyone. Nice to see all of you today. I'm Kamaria Wahab, one of the orthopedic nurse in Tan Tock Seng. So I shall proceed with the most important part of this section, which is how do you prevent osteoporosis and maximize bone health. Generally, there are 3 aspects that you can do to maximize your bone health. They are maintaining a good nutrition. The key nutrients for bone health at all ages are calcium, protein, and vitamin D. Secondly, engaging in regular exercise. Regular exercise can reduce the rate of bone loss, which reduces the risk of fracture from osteoporosis. And lastly, to adopt a healthy lifestyle habits. So now, let us all focus on nutrition first. Like I said on my previous slide, the key nutrients for bone health at all ages are calcium, protein, and vitamin D, and ensure that you have a balanced diet. The recommended intake of these nutrients varies at different stages in life. Firstly, let me touch on a component called calcium. At all ages, calcium is required for bone, muscle, and nerve health. The main store for calcium in our body are in the bones, and it ensures bone structure and strength. If we do not have any adequate calcium in our diet, our body will take the calcium from our bones to maintain our muscle and nerve functions. The amount of calcium that is absorbed from your diet will depend on the amount of calcium that you consume daily. For healthy people aged 51 and above, the Health Promotion Board recommends about 1,000 milligrams of calcium a day. People with osteoporosis may require slightly more calcium than this. Dietary calcium can be obtained from dietary products such as milk, yogurt, cheese, dark leafy green vegetables such as spinach, also from calcium-fortified foods such as high calcium milk or bread. Therefore, it is important to read the nutritional value of food items to ensure it is calcium fortified. Next up will be vitamin D. Vitamin D has a beneficial effect on bone health throughout life through several key functions. It actually assists in calcium absorption from food in the intestine. It increases bone mineral density. It also recommended to achieve at least 2.5 micrograms of vitamin D each day. The best way to get enough vitamin D is to take a walk outdoors when the sun is up. Just about 15 to 30 minutes of daily sunlight exposure is actually enough. Practice safe sun exposure such as not doing outdoor activities during the hottest period of the day. Therefore, dietary sources of vitamin D, which includes egg, liver, oily fishes like salmon, tuna, mackerel, and cod. Next up is protein. It is a building block for strong bones and muscles. Similar to calcium and vitamin D, insufficient protein intake slows down bone development and bone mass maintenance later in your life. A low protein intake is associated with reduced muscle mass, and seniors with decreased protein intake and more vulnerable to muscle weakness. sarcopenia, which means age-related decline in muscle mass and function and frailty. All will contribute to an increased risk of falling. Protein can be obtained from foods such as chicken and fish. Having sufficient calcium in your diet is not as difficult if we eat a variety from different food groups and in moderation. The food groups are brown rice and wholemeal bread, vegetable, fruit, meat, and others. The Health Promotion Board has actually introduced the healthy plate as seen as guide for all of us. A balanced diet will provide a body with enough nutrient, which includes calcium to build strong bone. For more information and detailed explanation on good nutrients, you may find out from the resources by our Tan Tock Seng dietitian in our Tan Tock Seng Health Library. Now, let's proceed with a short fun facts on calcium contains of certain foods. Fun fact number 1. Between 1 glass of high calcium soy milk and 1 slice of calcium fortified white bread, which do you think has higher calcium content? 100% of you answered the 1 glass of high calcium soy milk, which is correct. 250 ml of high calcium soy milk contains approximately 500 milligrams of calcium, while 1 slice of high calcium white bread contains about 150 to 210 micrograms of calcium. Therefore, it is always important to check the nutritional levels of the soy milk and bread to make sure that they are enriched with calcium, as not all products are. Okay, calcium content for fun fact number 2. Which one has higher? Will it be 1 mug of spinach or 1 mug of cooked broccoli? I give you some time to answer. All right, so 33% of you actually answer broccoli, while 68% actually answer 1 mug of cooked spinach. The answer would be 1 mug of cooked spinach. So this dark leafy vegetable like spinach contain calcium. Spinach also contains vitamins and nutrients. 1 mug of cooked spinach has approximate about 140 milligrams of calcium, and 1 mug of cooked broccoli only have 50 milligrams of calcium. Please note that the calcium content given for the food mentioned is approximate. This is because calcium content varies depending on the method of production, recipe, or brand. While all the food mentioned contains calcium, it is also good to keep in mind that the daily requirement of calcium. So for adults aged 51 years and above, recommended is to get 1000 milligrams of calcium a day. Eat variety of food to attain your daily calcium requirement. These are the QR code in which you can screenshot for additional resources on calcium and nutrition prepared by our Tan Tock Seng dietitian and also from Health Hub. Thank you. I shall now pass my presentation over to our physiotherapist Kamini, who will share more about exercises.
Hi everyone, my name is Kamini and I'm a physiotherapist at Tan Tock Seng Hospital. Today, I'm here to share with you more about how exercise plays an important role in the management and prevention of osteoporosis. So let's get started. Some of you might be wondering, how is exercise going to help if my bones are already weak and brittle? Well, actually, our bones are mostly made up of this substance called collagen, which is capable of continuously adapting to its changing mechanical environment. So what this actually means is that when we exercise and load our bones more than what is usually used to, our bones will adapt by stimulating bone growth and bone mass such that it will now be able to adapt to this new load. It can now withstand this new load. All right. So moreover, studies have also found that even a small increase in bone mass at certain sites, such as the hips and the spine, can increase bone mass drastically. And if you can recall from what my colleagues mentioned earlier, these are the same areas that are usually weaker and prone to fractures in osteoporotic people. However, this does not mean that any exercise you do is going to help increase your bone mass. Osteogenic exercises, which are movements that load bones adequately, are required to stimulate bone formation and increase bone mass. In other words, your prolonged aerobic exercises, such as your walking, cycling, and swimming, are not osteogenic. These exercises alone are insufficient to load your bones and will not be enough to manage or prevent your osteoporosis. So you might be wondering, what are these osteogenic exercises then? Well, they mainly include these four overarching principles. Firstly, they should generate relatively high load on your bone. Secondly, they must be performed quickly. Next, they should be done in small sets of less than 20 repetitions to be effective and not all at one go. Last but not least, they should involve some multi-directional movement. Now that we understand exercise is important, some of you might be thinking, okay, but I'm too young for osteoporosis. I can probably exercise when I'm older. Well, that might not be the case. Research has in fact found that a prime time to regain bone strength and mass is actually in adolescence. This is because the amount of bone mineral gained during your growth years is an important predictor of bone mineral status when you're older. And it's also found that bone responds more favorably to physical activity when it's done during childhood and adolescence. So when you're in adulthood, the goal now is to offset or slow down bone loss that is commonly occurring at this stage, rather than adding on new bone mass. So no matter how old or how young you are, the exercises should be starting now and not procrastinated for later. There are three main types of exercises that make up a comprehensive exercise regime that targets osteoporosis. This includes strength training, balance training, and lastly, loading exercises. Before we jump straight into the specific exercises, it is important to determine whether low or high intensity exercises are suitable for you. So here, we have a little checklist. Do have a look through the list and check if any of these are applicable to you. Do keep in mind that this checklist is not exhaustive, so if you have any doubts, do consult a doctor or physiotherapist before starting the exercises. Right, I'll just give you a moment to have a good look through the list. Okay, so if you did fit in any one or more of the checklist earlier, you fall under the low intensity group, and your aim is to manage your osteoporosis and prevent falls. If you did not fit in any of the checklists mentioned earlier, you fall under the high intensity group, and your goal is to maximize bone mass and strength, as well as to prevent osteoporosis. Now, let's jump straight into the strength training routine. For both high and low intensity groups, the guidelines recommend strength training to be done twice a week. Exercises are to be done in sets of 8 repetitions for each exercise, and a total of 2 to 3 sets to be completed across the day. The high intensity group can perform exercises such as weighted lunges, squats, deadlifts, or even kettlebell swings. The weight chosen to be used during these exercises should be one that makes it very hard to complete 8 repetitions. Meanwhile, the low intensity group can perform exercises such as double leg bridging and straight leg raise. This group can use either dumbbell weights, ankle weights, or even TheraBands to make it hard to complete 8 repetitions. If weights or TheraBands are not available, the position can be held for about 5 to 10 seconds before lowering the leg down to still make the exercise challenging. Next up, we have balance training. Balance training is another crucial component of osteogenic exercises and falls prevention. For both high and low intensity groups, the guidelines recommend balance training to be performed 4 times a week. Each of the exercises are to be held for at least 10 seconds, and the entire balance routine should be about 30 minutes each session. The high intensity group participants can incorporate the balance exercises into the strength training routine. So for example, you can do single leg deadlifts, single leg torso twists, or you can even stand or do mini squats on a Bosu ball that can help train your balance. If these exercises feel very hard but still able to be completed, you are working at the correct intensity. The low intensity group, on the other hand, can perform exercises such as tandem stance and single leg stance, as shown in the pictures. These exercises should feel hard to complete still. For both groups, it is advised to stand near a stable hand support when doing the balance exercises. The high intensity group is recommended to not hold onto the support unless they're about to lose their balance. Whereas a low intensity group, you may hold onto the stable support first and then gradually wean off after improving in subsequent sessions. Progressions of balance training can be made by gradually weaning off the arm support, closing your eyes, incorporating reaching tasks or even cognitive tasks, or you can simply be standing on softer surfaces such as towels. It is advisable for you to consult a physiotherapist if you have doubts on which progression is suitable for you. Lastly, we have loading exercises. For both high and low intensity groups, the recommended frequency here is 4 to 7 days a week. The repetitions are slightly different between the two groups. In high intensity group, you're advised to perform 10 to 20 repetitions of the exercise for a total of 3 to 5 sets with 1 to 2 minutes of rest in between each set. Whereas for the low intensity group, you're advised to just perform 10 repetitions for a total of 5 sets and have 1 to 2 minutes of rest in between the sets as well. Similar to the strength and balance training, the high intensity group should be doing the loading exercises at a pace such that it feels very hard to complete the set. Exercises such as jump squats, skipping, and burpees are possible options for this group. Whereas the low intensity group, you guys can be doing the exercises such as sit to stand practice or even a step up practice at a pace such that it feels hard to complete the set. I understand it can be quite challenging to remember all of the different sets and reps for each of the type of exercise I mentioned. So here we have a quick overview of the recommended dosages for the overall exercise regime. Just have a look through or feel free to take a screenshot if you need to. So this includes for all the loading exercises, balance exercises, as well as for the strength training. All right, moving on. Next up, we have some general reminders for you before you start on the exercise journey. You're expected to feel some soreness and muscle aching after exercising, especially if you're not been exercising recently, so do not be alarmed. What you can do is actually start each session with a light warm-up and end with a proper stretching and cool down. What you should not be feeling is any deep or sharp pain. You should also not be feeling any chest pain or severe shortness of breath. If you do experience any of these symptoms, you are to stop the exercises and seek medical attention at the nearest GP. In cases of severe pain or symptoms, please go see the doctor at the nearest emergency department. If you're part of a low intensity group, please keep in mind the following as well. First and foremost, do not perform any twisting movements or excessive bending at the back during the exercises. Always keep your back in a neutral position. Next, always focus on proper technique and control during exercises. Have someone supervise the exercises or stand near a stable support. If you're generally weaker or inactive prior to this, do consider doing a period of strength training alone before starting on the loading exercises. Last but not least, you should not be in any pain during the exercises. If you do feel pain, please stop the exercises and seek medical advice, as you may benefit from pain management first. For more exercises and resources, kindly do visit Tan Tock Seng Library using these links and QR codes. I would now like to pass the time over to my colleague Su Yin, who will be taking you through some healthy lifestyle habits.
Thank you, Kamini. This is Sui here from Tan Tock Seng. I'm the nurse clinician from the orthopedic ward. So now we have come to the next topic on how we can adopt healthier lifestyle to maximize our bone health. So for healthy lifestyle habits, there are some that we can some healthy lifestyle that we can adopt. Firstly, caffeine or carbonated drinks, because limit your caffeine or carbonated drinks because excessive intake can reduce calcium absorption and bone mass. It's also advisable to stop smoking because nicotine from cigarettes cause reduction in bone formation. Also limit your alcohol intake to not more than 2 cups of alcohol a day. And lastly, maintain a healthy body weight because this will help us to maximize our bone health. The next topic is how we can prevent falls. Because falls are very, very common in Singapore, people who are above 65 years old tend to have at least one fall in a year. So what's going to happen after a fall? Risk of fracture is very high after a fall. And studies have shown that a year after hip fractures, 40% of them may not be able to walk independently, which means they might need some walking assistance. 60 of them require assistance with functioning in their daily activities. Lastly, there is 20 to 24% of mortality rates, especially for those who are bedbound after hip fractures. So what can we do to prevent falls? So we'll share some home safety tips which are easy and effective. They are good lighting. Consider using night lights along corridors. So this will prevent fall as well. And next is to be clutter-free. Ensure house is clutter-free to prevent falls. And when we use non-slip mats, when you use a mats, use a non-slip mats. Make sure there are no loose mats lying around. Those are hazardous. And next, we can install grab bars in the toilet. Another alternative is anti-slip floor stickers for toilets. They are hassle-free and cheaper alternatives to changing your bathroom tiles to ensure non-slip flooring. Next is to consider sitting down during a shower. And make sure to clean up when there is any spills or mess on the floor. And when it comes to wire, ensure the wires are tucked aside to prevent tripping, and need to organize your items. Keep frequent use items within reach. And when it comes to shoes, well-fitted shoes are recommended and try to avoid slippers. And last one is called hip guard or hip protectors. Okay, while this may not be very friendly with our Singapore weather, it can be beneficial for elderly who have osteoporosis and are very prone to falls. Hip protectors may reduce risk of hip fracture after a fall. Okay, now we're going to practice how we can make our homes safer with these examples. First, look at a picture of this toilet. What can we do to make this toilet safer? You can type in your suggestions in the Zoom chat box. I will give you some time for it. I can see very good answers, good ideas, grip bars, anti-slip floor mats, handrails near the toilet, keep the floor dry. All these are very good housekeeping methods. Yeah, so okay, thank you for our answers. All you have mentioned, grab bar can be installed in the first photo. Okay, now we move on to the next picture. This is a picture of a rack. What do you think we can do better? Okay, thank you for all your answers. Your answers are correct. It will be best to place items within reach. Okay, so now we move on to the next picture. Now we have a picture of a bedroom sleeper. What do you think we can do about this? Thank you all for the answers. Yes, we should be using either anti-slip slippers or wear fitted shoe. Okay, for the last photo, these are the pictures of wires and cables. How can we make the home safer for this place? Okay, thank you for all the answers. What you're saying, your answers are correct. So we should keep the wires tucked aside, coil them and tidy them neatly. Okay. So in summary, there are many things that we can do to prevent osteoporotic fractures. Consume nutritious food, exercise regularly, and maintain healthy lifestyles. So if you're caring for an elderly, use home safety tips shared earlier to prevent them from falling. If you're caring for an elderly who is bedbound, always use slide sheets to mobilize. And lastly, to use proper body techniques during lifting or transfer to prevent injuries both to you and your loved ones. So now I'll pass back to Aisha to continue the presentation.
Yeah, thank you, Sister Suyin. So you see on screen here is actually osteoporosis support groups. So if you need more information on osteoporosis, you may also check out these support groups online that we have listed here below. We'd like to remind you that as you give care to your care recipients, because I believe most of you here are caregivers of patients, do take time to practice self-care as well. And taking care of your health would mean to eat well, to rest whenever you can, and also stay active. Remember to also take some time for respite, and most importantly, know that you are not alone. If you need additional support as a caregiver, do feel free to reach out to us.